solid design principle and interface segregation, SOLID. So I, interface segregation. So after we do single responsibility, that is division of a class, not interface related, and then open close principle, not interface related, and then we have the scope substitution, not interface related, but we have interface segregation. So what is interface segregation? So if I have a class and class has different roles, like we have given example, like there is a printer class and it has a role of printing, but it has other role also, like uh, faxing the printed data and stapling it. So a class has different role. If it has different role, then methods are there. If methods are there, then they are kind of convoluted. Each one will call other. So they are mixed together. This is a service component. What about client component? Now client component is when it is using printer class, it has option to print, fax, and staple. It doesn't want faxing, but still methods are available. Okay, so there are kind of many gotcha or there are many caveat. So on both sides, if I see the service component, then all the kind of roles, all the method that belongs to there are three different roles: faxing, stapling, and printing. And all the three different roles are independent to each other. They are orthogonal to each other. Okay, someone can print but may not like to fax or staple. Okay, if someone is doing stapling and there is some error, then there will be call to everywhere because all are mixed together. Everything is happening in one go. Okay, on the client component side, we depend upon the service component. Now, a person is seeing all the method, even though he is not dependent upon all the rules. So there is a class. Inside the class, there are three rules. So it can be said that inside one class there are three classes because they are independent to each other. Each class has different set of methods. If I see the service component with printer class, then each one is calling each other because they are open to each other and anyone can call anyone else. But if we see the client component, which is dependent upon the service component, and then it is a kind of client component which is dependent upon the service component, then it is a, kind of seeing all the methods of the service component. So that is the problem. Means why client method should be dependent upon a method that it do not use. So that is the concept of the interface segregation. If client has an object pointer and it has the object, then why it is forced to see the methods that it do not use. So that is something that is a kind of uh, that is forced. So why a client is forced to see a method that it do not use? Okay, so what is the concept now? Client is seeing all the method unnecessarily, and service component is intermixing everything unnecessarily. So interface segregation. If a class has so many roles, then each role should become a class. This is different to a single responsibility. In single responsibility, if a class has many reasons to change, then all should be separate class. Straightforward. But in interface segregation, if a class has has different roles, then all those roles should be their methods. So should be different interfaces like printer class, printing, faxing, and stapling. Three different roles are there. Then there would be three different interfaces. So print interface separate, fax interface separate, and staple interface separate. Now, if three interfaces are separate, then their methods are they are kind of cohesive and they are stick in a one arena, and that is completely inside a kind of containment. Okay, so they are encapsulated inside a particular class, so no one can see each other. So in print class, print interfaces, this is the way interface segregation is different to single responsibility. There we divide into separate class. Here we divide into separate interface. Now print is a separate interface, and staple and fax are separate interfaces, and each interface has set of methods. Now printer class may realize all the interface. It is up to the printer class. It may realize, or even though it realizes all the interfaces, but programming will happen through interface only. So in the implementation class also, in the concrete class of the printer. So printer is a concrete class. It has three parent. It has three base classes, three interfaces as well. Printer is a class now. It has three interfaces, three base class interfaces. One is print, and one is staple, and one is fax. Now, when it is writing the logic, then it can switch the interfaces inside the implementation only, and then it can all are can be in different apartment or different rooms. So this is the implementation of printer. Or three classes can realize print, staple, and fax separately. Then it is anyway it is separate. So that is something that should be done. This is service component. Now, making change at one place would not change other because all are coming through separate interface. Okay. Now, if we see the client component is using it. It has, suppose it has a printer object, but printer object now. Okay. So SOLID. So D we are not talking now, but that is called dependency inversion. Now the client component was written through printer class. Now client component is written through these interfaces. Okay, so print interface and fax interface and staple interface. Okay, so if it, even though if it receives kind of through any interface, one of the three, the print interface, or staple interface, or through the fax interface, if it receives the printer object, then it can switch. It can brings in any interface from the object because object is realizing the interface. Okay. Now, the smooth part is that if it does not need faxing, then it cannot see the fax method. So it would it would work only with the print interface and staple interface. Fax interface, it will just won't use it at all. Anyway, it cannot see because it has to fetch back the fax interface from the printer object and then start working on it. So a class, client class, which is which is not dependent upon a particular method, then he should not be forced to see that method. Now, through the dependency inversion, now the client component is dependent upon the interfaces like print. Earlier, it was dependent upon the printer pointer. Now, print, fax, and staple interfaces, there it is dependent upon. And the service component, it is realizing these three interfaces, and then it is working cleanly, not intermixing the code. Now, the client component that it does not need faxing, then it not do not need to care about the fax interface at all. Now think about the under the fax interface, two subclasses came. One is fax and one is email. Both are conforming to the same interface. Now the client component, which is using faxing, it would now get the fax interface through which it Through fax interface, it would get the email object. So through the object that is passed through the fax interface is email. Means printer fax, fax interface, staple interface, print interface. From there, we have derived printer class. Okay, but inside the printer, again the now print, fax, and staple. From the fax, there is two subclasses: fax, faxing, and emailing. Okay, the printer class, which is realizing the print, fax, and staple, it has email object, it has implemented email object. Means this is what client component is doing. Means this is how he has created the printer class. Now through the fax interface only, he is accessing the email object. Okay, he need not bother about the faxing object. So the concept is that the client component, whatever it wants, okay, whatever it wants, it should use that one rather than seeing all the methods and then coming to a confusion. Now whatever the logic, now think about the client component. Client component has written code based upon the fax interface. It does the faxing. Okay, client has written the code that is based upon the fax interface. If tomorrow it needs email also, it is closed for modification because email is confirming all the interfaces same as fax and it is working. So the concept about interface programming is your code is written with the interface pointer. At runtime, you place any object you want. So if code is written with the staple pointer on the client side and tomorrow book winding is required, then book winding would derive from the staple interface and book winding object would be received on the client side and code is closed for the modification. Everything works the way it is. Okay. If client does not want, he may not use staple at all. But in earlier case, the printer class had everything. So if it has printer pointer, means all the methods are exposed to the client component, even though it may not need faxing and stapling. Now, if he does not need faxing altogether, he may not work on the faxing interface. But in the faxing interface, if he needs code is written with the faxing interface also, then email or SMS, those objects can also be passed. And if he is using SMS, then email and faxing, and the actual concrete method need not to be shown to the client. Everything is so clean. So this happens because orthogonality. Okay, so printer class had three different roles and all three were orthogonal. Okay, how it matters that someone is printing then stapling. Stapling and printing are completely different. Printing and faxing are completely different. If these three are different, then these three should go in three different interfaces. If they go in three different interfaces, then extensibility of the three different interfaces in own domain is also possible. So printing, if there is a print interface, then printing can happen through laser printer, print dot matrix printer, inkjet printer, nowadays thermal printer, everything is possible. If a staple interface is there, then book winding, a spiral winding, a staple, everything is possible. If fax interface is there, then faxing, emailing, SMS, okay, Bluetooth, everything is possible. Now, this much kind of a bridge design pattern, the way we have seen, is possible. Now, a single class, the class which need to realize, he will just derive from the fax, staple, and print, and then he would kind of realize these interfaces, and against the realization, he would use the actual object against their hierarchy. So the service component is clean now because it is different interfaces are there. One particular class may not implement all the interfaces. So class There can be separate class for separate interface. On the client interface side, it will use all the pointers what it needs. Otherwise, it won't use. Now, against each pointer type, interface type, that is dependency inversion. It is not dependent upon any concrete class. Against each pointer type, he may write the kind of pseudocode that is strategy design. Pseudocode. Same pseudocode would work for all the class. So if someone has written code with the binding, then a spiral, a staple, or book binding, everything he can use the object. Everything is clean cut, no dependency on the methods or interface which is not used. Okay, so interface segregation. Please segregate all the interface in the service component, all the roles. What you feel it is independent to each other, orthogonal to each other, in different interfaces. Realize in different classes, or you can realize in the same class. If you realize in the same class, then inside the class work orthogonal, work independently, work through the pointers, interface pointers, not through the methods. So it is clean. Now, in the client component, there is a service component. In the client component, when you see, then use those interface only what you need. But if you write the code through the interface, it is very nice. And any subclass that will come in the future also, like you had written code with the fax interfaces. Now email, SMS, Bluetooth, everything will work. So whatever the object you pass at runtime, it will work as it is. Now, doesn't matter that what kind of faxing you're using, what kind of stapling you're using, what kind of print you are using. So everything is orthogonal, used when it is required. Otherwise, you won't see those methods. So nice. Interface segregation can be used in a strategy design pattern. Please use it.